Hello everyone, today is taking out and replacing the hard disk in this HP 240G6 laptop. Quite a nice small laptop. This one's pretty grubby. Gunk around the keyboard, and the hard disk or the SSD has failed in this one, so I need to open it up and replace it. This is otherwise known as product ID 4WV73ES and then a hash ABU. In other countries that's probably not going to be the 3 letters it ends with. So the important thing to know on these is there is no screws hidden under these rubber feet, which quite often on this kind of HP designed laptop there are. There are 2 screws underneath the battery, so remove the battery, and I'm going to start with those 2 screws. If you've seen my videos before, I like to put the screws in a little layout on the table which matches where the screws came from. So if there are different length screws, I don't have to guess where they came from. They're just in a little map of their locations. So that's 4 screws along the top. Three in the centre, and then at the front here there are 2 that are off to a slight angle, and those ones are much shorter than the others. So that's all of the screws that you can see undone. We now need a spudger, or I like this very thin, very flexible craft knife. Lots of people are like, oh, you're going to damage the laptop. No, this is a really, I wouldn't say blunt, but it's so thin that it's not gouging any holes or anything in the plastic. This is also what was recommended by Lewis Rossman of Apple Mac YouTube Repair for doing stuff on some of the Apple machines he does. It is an RGM 103 and I got it from Amazon. So open up the machine, and I'm going to start probably at the front here, slide that down the gap and hinge upwards to unclip along the front of the machine. Then when you get that entire front bit undone, it's going to move along around the edge and do the same down the edge of the machine. So that's most of this side is now loose, and I need to do the final side. And that's a lot of this side also loose, but because the video connectors and other things go through the plastic here, this side will never feel quite as free as the side over this side. So at this point, close the lid again and flip the machine over. And bearing in mind that again all the video connectors and stuff are now over here, you don't want to start lifting up from this end because we need to get this bit of plastic this direction away from the video connector so that we can then lift the cover away. So starting on the side that doesn't have anything, or has only a USB and a card reader, you need to wiggle gently, because there's also some clips along here which usually you can undo just by wiggling and a bit of there we go, slight bit of force there, unclipped that, and it's going to hopefully sturdily but gently wiggle the entire lower case, bottom case, to unclip it. Do feel like there's these clips here might need a little bit of encouragement. So let's see whether, whoops, other than knocking over a screw. There we go. You may have just been able to use a bit of force, but I used the spudger for the clip, which is there and there. And there we go, we've removed the case, the underside cover from that machine, and I can see the problem here, which actually the disc hasn't gone wrong, it has come away from the serial ATA connector. So there's a couple of unusual things here, which is, I would have thought that this disc here would have a bracket holding it in place, but I can't see. Okay, so there's no double-sided tape on there, so it's not like that's been detached from an existing drive. Anyway, I can't see a screw mount. You could possibly have a screw mount there, but that lines up with that case one there, so it can't be a mount that goes there. So I'm a bit baffled as to how there's an SSD in this machine without suitable bracketing or something to hold it in place. So I guess if I just push that back into place, and I'm going to have to pack this out with something so that it can't fall out again, this machine will be fine. But as I say, my query or my worry there is, this can't, well, surely this can't have been delivered like this, but maybe it was. I also don't think HP would have used a SanDisk either. So I'm wondering if at some point in the past somebody else has upgraded this computer and not done a good job of it, but it does still not make sense. Because, for example, if you have a traditional hard disk, okay, I see. I think I see what goes on here. If you have a traditional hard disk, the disk is thicker, or I presume the one that it was delivered with, it's probably slightly thicker than the SSD. There are actually two rubbery or fabric kind of pads here, so just the friction of the case pushing down onto that hard disk probably keeps it in place more. But because the SSD is thinner, you can see that on there, not particularly obvious, but the SSD is thinner. The SSD just kind of wobbles about, so there's no friction holding the SSD into place. Curious. Anyway, Anyway, that's how you'd replace the hard disk that was in here, or potentially a broken SSD that is in your machine, with something else. As I say, if you're putting something in like an SSD which isn't as thick, you will need to find a way to pack that out so that the SSD can't fall out. Let's see if I can find something suitable. I'm going to go for a little bit of this foam. Okay, so that SSD is now it does shuffle if you really put effort on it or pressure on it, but just in general use of the machine and it getting plonked around and stuff, that should be fine. Before I put it back together, I will switch it on, just check that it actually does start. It looks like it's out of batteries. In fact, what am I saying? It's definitely out of batteries because the battery is there, not plugged in. So that's looking good, like it's starting up correctly. So there we go, that SSD you can see is there. And the machine successfully turned on. While we're in here, let's also see what else there is. You have memory or RAM. We've got 2 slots, one of which in this computer isn't in use. So it's a single stick of 8 GB of RAM that's in this machine by default, and then a spare slot so you could add extra in if you wanted to. We've got the CPU. The CPU is BGA soldered onto the board. Even if you took off this heatsink, you wouldn't be able to replace that CPU without a rework station, and generally it won't be worth attempting to do that. Wi-Fi card, speakers here at the front, touchpad buttons are here. This is the keyboard connector. And these two are probably to do with the touchpad, one to the buttons and one to the touchpad itself. Video connector, almost certainly the power connector, and that's probably about all that's interesting in there. So, time to put it back together. Get the case. Once again, you don't want to put it on first on the side without the video connector, because then you'll be pushing this bit of plastic over that VGA connector. So you need to make sure you start by seating it down on this side first, and then go around clipping it down as much as you can, then open it up, and again go around as much as you can, clipping it down all around, and now we're ready to put the screws back in. So we've got the two small ones at the front, the three in the middle, and finally the four at the back. Put the battery back in, and I'm going to turn the machine on once more just to check. And that looks like it's starting up. So there we go, that's how you replace the hard disk or SSD within this computer. Hopefully this video has been helpful to you. If it has, it would be really helpful to me if you wouldn't mind subscribing to my YouTube channel. You don't need to have the video notifications switched on, but the subscriber numbers really do help. Thank you very much.